Can you all hear me now? Yeah, right. Let me try it one more time. That didn't go according to plan. Let's try it again now. You see that? Yeah. Okay. Finally. Right. Let's get cracking. Right. So like I said, self-image is not self-esteem, and self-image is not self-belief. Self-image is not self-confidence, because all these three things are what you perceive yourself to be, what you feel. It's all conscious. It's what you're conscious of yourself. Now, but when we speak of self-image, it's much deeper than that, and it addresses what happens in the subconscious mind, what you're not even aware of. You know the things that you're not really aware of yourself about, if that makes sense, and therefore it's much deeper. So yeah, obviously self-esteem there is a bit of an overlap there, yes, and your self-image might determine your self-esteem or your self-belief or your confidence, but the problem with these three, self-esteem especially, it also relies so much on what happens outside. For instance, someone might not have necessarily good self-image, but may temporarily have a great self-esteem if they get praised for something nice that they do. You know what I mean? So someone can feel good about themselves that, oh, I did something really nice today and I got lots of praise for it. And you can have great self-esteem, but it's not necessarily a permanent thing. While as for self-image is something that really stays with you. It really is who you are. It really is the very definition of your personality. So yeah. Right, now to explain what self-image is, I've used this analogy. It's a negative film analogy. Now, for those who are 25 years and younger, they might not have a clue what I'm talking about here. Back in the day, when we took photographs, we used to use the 35mm films. They're called negative films, basically. And you stick that into a camera, and when you take a picture, basically, the image goes and imprints itself on that negative film, and you take that film physically to people that will process that, and they'll develop a picture out of it. I'm not sure if Boke, you have a clue what I'm talking about, but you can Google it. You'll find it in there somewhere. But basically, that's how pictures used to be taken. And now I remember something about it back then, and I remember one particular experience. I remember I think it was my O-level graduation party, and got myself a camera, got myself 35mm film in its case and everything. Started taking lots of pictures, very nice pictures, take pictures, and I think I took like 30 something. I think one film has about 36 pictures in it or something like that. And then it got to a time that I took it for processing, and when they were processing it, when I went to collect my pictures, I only got like 18 pictures out of it. And I was like, what is going on? I was expecting 36 pictures. Why have I got only 18 pictures? And they said, well, the rest of the pictures went bad. And I mean, what do you mean they went bad? It's like, oh, they didn't come up nice. So clearly when you were taking the pictures, you didn't do a good job at doing that. And therefore you've lost almost half the pictures, and you've only got like 18 or 20 pictures. Now, why am I saying all this? Is that back in those days, you had to really make sure, if you're taking a picture, to make sure that you're taking a really good one, because once that image is captured on a film, that's it. You can't change it. That's the end of it. It's not like these days, with digital cameras. You take a picture, you're not quite happy, you delete it, you take another one, you delete it, you take another one. Or sometimes you take a picture, even if it's not that great, it doesn't matter, because there is Photoshop. You can always Photoshop it, clean it up a little bit here, clean it up a little bit there, change it here. You're not quite sure, you can add a hat on top, you can add even glasses. Well, you didn't have it. Everything is done digitally these days. So it's very different. Now, self-image is very much like the negative film, because once you've imprinted on your subconscious mind, that's just who you are. I mean, the only way you can change who you are is to change what you imprint in the subconscious mind. You can't have a film say one thing and expect a picture to say something different. It doesn't work like that. If I take a picture and you end up with red eyes, that's the end of it. That picture will always come up red eyes. That's it. There was no technology. There was no filter that you can say, I'm going to get rid of the red eyes or do this or do that. So that's the same thing with self-image. So self-image is something permanent. It's something that is very difficult to change. it takes time to change, and like with the film that I was giving you the analogy of, more effort is put on actually capturing the good image on the film rather than the result that you get, because eventually the pictures that you get at the end depends on how well you capture the image in the film. So it's the same thing with self-image. The better we invest in building a really positive self-image, the better we become, rather than focusing on the superficial things like our self-esteem or how good we are doing things and this and that, rather than focusing on the habitual things, the subconscious things that go on, to really see lasting changes in our lives. Let's crack on. Another way to describe self-image is to use a thermostat analogy. Now, a thermostat. I mean, here in the UK, we all have central heating, and with central heating, you always have this little thing. I've got a picture there of a thermostat and how it looks like. We always have that little dial thing that you can kind of set the temperature that you want your house to be at. And with the thermostat, basically how it works is that it tries to maintain that temperature. So your boiler will always fire up when the temperature in your house has gone below that set temperature. So you say 25 degrees, for instance. So when the temperature in the house or in that room goes below 25, it goes to 20, for instance, the thermostat tells the boiler that you need to fire up because the temperature is lower than what it needs to be. And then the boiler heats up the house, the temperature starts going up, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24. And once it gets to 25, and it's what was expected, the thermostat tells the boiler again that that's it, that's the right temperature, you can turn down now, we're at the right temperature. And so it keeps doing that, and it keeps regulating that temperature and keeps it at that optimum level. Now, self-image is exactly the same way, that your self-image is almost like, it almost like regulates who you are, what you do, the level of success, what you can achieve, everything, and it kind of keeps them at that same level all the time, the same way thermostat does with the room temperature. And this concept is explained really, really well by Dr. Maxwell Maltz in his book Psycho-Cybernetics. And that video that I played, the guy kind of explained this a little bit, and it makes a great read. I'm sure Steve will agree with me on that. Psycho-Cybernetics is one of my favorite books. I think I've read it twice already, and I'll probably read it for the third time. It's a brilliant book. I highly recommend it.
Very good book. Very good book.
I highly recommend it. So he in that book he talks about, basically, I mentioned this guy before. He's actually a medical doctor. He was a plastic surgeon back in the 60s, and how he came about this issue of self-image is when he was doing surgeries, performing cosmetic surgeries on people. Say maybe someone has been disfigured due to, say, to burning injuries, or someone with this disfigurement from birth, and they wanted to have plastic surgery to kind of improve their image and how they look on outwardly. And what he realized is that amongst his patients, you had patients that after performing the operation and getting their facelift and they look better now, some of them would end up having really positive image of themselves, become really positive, have a very positive psychological impact on their lives as a result. But then you had another group of people that would have the operation, have the changes that they want, but they would still really struggle with their image even after the surgeries. And some would even go to a length of calling him a con man and saying that, oh, you've ripped us off, you haven't really done much, there isn't much change. But clearly these people have undergone this surgery, they have really changed, they've been transformed on the outside, but for some reason, because the self-image has remained really negative about themselves, they just can't break out of it. And so this made him to conclude, Dr. Maltz, it made him to conclude that in us as humans, there are two images. There is that outward image that we have of ourselves, basically what we see on the outside, what you see yourself on the mirror, what you hear of other people telling you who you are and how you look and everything. But there is another one that is deeply embedded in ourselves, and we almost don't have control of, in a way, at least not on a daily basis. And sometimes, if that is different to what you see outside, that's when you can have these problems that you have, like the problem he was having with some of his patients, that though they were looking different and beautiful on the outside, they still couldn't accept that they have actually changed and that they look different. So he devised this theory of psychocybernetics, which basically, when you talk of cybernetics is things like thermostat, for instance. A thermostat is a cybernetic instrument. Cybernetics is the study of regulation, servo mechanism, the ability to kind of always returning to the target. I'll give you an example. For instance, an airplane. When a plane is flying, the pilot directs the plane to take off. Once it takes off, almost always they'll put it on autopilot. Now, what autopilot means basically is that the pilot sets the coordinates of where they want to go, and they leave the plane pretty much to fly itself. The pilot would just as well leave the cockpit and come and sit with us in where we are, but obviously they won't do that. But basically, the plane most of the time will just fly itself. Now, what happens is once you've set those coordinates in, as the plane is flying, so much happens up there. There is turbulence, there is changes in weather, there are lots of changes that happen, wind. All that can kind of toss the plane left and right, up and down, and kind of deflect and deviate it from its flight path, if you like. But with cybernetics, or the autopilot mode, which is cybernetic, basically, the servo mechanism always brings the plane back to the flight path, if that makes sense. So though you have a flight plan, it keeps the plane will keep deviating every now and again, but it will always come back to that plan, because it is automated to always return. So that's what cybernetic is all about. So Dr. Maxwell Maltz was suggesting that even with us as humans, we have a similar sort of system embedded in us, and he called it psycho-cybernetic. Psycho because it's a brain, to do with brain, and cybernetics to do with regulation. So we always tend to regulate ourselves based on the imprint in our subconscious, and that's what self-image is all about. So my definition of self-image, here it is. Self-image is the subconscious framework through which you experience life and how you perceive yourself in it. So that's what it's all about. It's that framework, the things that you've built over time, over the years, the experiences that you've collected that have been deeply embedded in the subconscious mind, that determines how you experience life, how you see life. For instance, going back to the example of Maxwell Maltz's patients, though on the outside their face is very different, they're more beautiful, they've got all their disfigurements taken away, but because they still have the old framework, so they still perceive them differently. So basically that framework through which you experience life is what really matters, and you need to learn how to change that, and that's how you improve one's self-image. Another guy that I love so much is a guy called Bob Proctor. If you've never heard of Bob Proctor, write that name down, go on YouTube, just click Bob Proctor and listen to his video. He talks about paradigm and paradigm shift, and he's got lots of videos and teachings about paradigm, and it's a great view. You learn a lot from this guy. And basically self-image is one's own paradigm. Basically that's what it is. And if I just define for you what paradigm is. Paradigm is just fixed rules or fixed set of rules deeply embedded in one's subconscious mind. Basically, these are rules that will define your values, your convictions, your belief systems, your assumptions and generalizations. Sometimes we don't realize how many assumptions we make and how that affects the way we act, how that affects the way we believe in ourselves, how that affects the way we view people, how it affects the way we interact with people. And therefore, all those things is what sets your paradigm, is what sets your self-image, your realm of possibilities, what you consider as possible to you. And sometimes you don't even have to think of it consciously. It's just so deeply embedded in your subconscious mind that you find yourself limiting yourself. You have these limiting beliefs that you can't do this or you can't do that, but it's all because your self-image is already a limited commodity. Okay, now let's talk about components of self-image. Now, self-image has two components. You've got the conscious component and the subconscious component. Now, it's quite unfortunate because I've done a bit of research. If you go online and Google self-image and say what is self-image and try and learn it and see what comes up, or you go on YouTube and say self-image and you see the videos that come up. More often than not, a lot of people will be talking about the conscious component of self-image. And as far as I'm concerned, that only accounts for about 5% of what self-image is. And these will be the things that we were talking about earlier, things to do with self-esteem, things to do with self-belief, things to do with self-confidence, you know. And it's all about how you feel, what you consciously know of yourself, or the feedbacks that you get from other people and from your environment about yourself. So it's all conscious. It's all about how you feel and what you know. And as far as I'm concerned, that is transient. That is very much dependent on circumstances. It's very much dependent on your audience, the people that you are with. For instance, let me give you let's talk about confidence, for instance. If you're sitting with if you bring me here and you say, Charles, can you talk about self-image? Okay, I'll be so confident to talk about self-image. Why? Because it is something that I've researched so much on. It's something that I've learned a lot. I've read a lot of books about self-image. I'll be extremely confident. I'll come right here with so much self-belief. I'll have great self-esteem. I'll sit here for hours, talk to you about self-image. Because why? Because it's something that I know. It's something that I've researched. It's something that I have so much confidence in. I know consciously that I can talk about this. And therefore, that boosts my confidence. But if you say, Charles, can you come here and talk about how to fly a rocket into space, for instance? Right. Do you think I'm going to be that confident to do that? No, obviously not. It is the same person. 1 second ago, I was so confident to talk about self-image, and all of a sudden, all my confidence is gone, you know, and I'll stand here, I'll start biting my nails, you know, tremors, I'll probably start sweating even, and my heart rate will start going up, and all of a sudden I might say, oh my goodness, I have such low self-esteem, you know, I don't have self-belief. Because why? Because all these are conscious things. They are very transient. It all depends on circumstances. It all depends on your audience, the people that you need to interact with. It all depends on that. So it all makes up for about 5% of what self-image is. But to be perfectly honest with you, the majority, the greatest bulk of what self-image is subconscious, like I said before. And as far as I'm concerned, that makes up about 95% of what self-image is. And I think that's where we need to really focus on investing in our subconscious self, something that we don't really see on a daily basis, something that we don't feel, something that we don't even experience, but it's deeply embedded in us, and in one or another it affects how we act and conduct ourselves. So in a nutshell, that is the real you. The subconscious self-image component is the real you, and that's a more permanent self, and it's the one that is really hard to change. And why is it really hard to change? It's really hard to change because it was really hard to imprint in the first place. It is something that has been imprinted over the years since you were little, with your experiences, the positive experiences, the negative experiences, the emotions that were associated with it. All that has, over the years, has imprinted in you and has helped you shape your worldview, if you like, your paradigm, the way you see the world, the way you see things. And therefore, changing it is also really hard. You really need to work on it. It takes time, it takes dedication and desire to do that. But the fruits of it, I'm telling you, are really positive, and I'm really hoping that we can really invest in that following this talk. Right, so something else with the subconscious component of self-image, that's the one that drives habits. You know, as humans, we are habitual creatures. What do I mean by that? I mean that 95% of what we do because we've always done. You know, I always say that when we wake up in the morning, you don't even have to think. You have that routine, the way you do things, that you don't even have to think of it. You wake up in the morning. I don't know what your routine is. Maybe you turn around. If you're using an alarm clock, maybe you turn it off. To some people, the next thing is to take that phone and scroll through and see what messages are in there. To others, to go on Facebook. I don't know. To others, maybe it's to kneel down and pray. Others, maybe you wake up, you go straight into the bathroom, you brush your teeth, and then you do this, and then you do that, and then you do. And most of these things, because you've been doing that for years, you're doing it almost like as a habit, and you don't even have to think of it. And it's all embedded in your subconscious mind, and you're almost like on automation. And so self-image basically is in your subconscious. It's what drives these habits. It basically defines who you are, how you always do things, and how you'll always keep doing those things. And that's why sometimes it's very difficult to break these habits. You know, you might even say, I've got this bad habit, I really need to break it down. And you start today and tomorrow, and by day 3, you always go back to your old habits and kind of think, this is so difficult to break. Why? Because it is so deeply embedded in your self-image. And unless you change that self-image, your habits will always follow the same pattern, the same pattern. Yeah, so I've got this quote here. It says, habits always bring results, good or bad. So at the end of the day, it all comes down to habits. You know, it is the habits that will get you the results. If you can't change the habits, or if you can invest on those winning habits, those positive habits, then it will always be difficult to kind of have really lasting change and success, basically, in general. So the next question is, how do you develop a winning self-image? Now, I'm going to try and draw some lessons from another fantastic book. And if you haven't read this, you've got to read it. If you have read it, I suggest you read it again and again and again and again. Lots of motivational speakers, great authors, great people, successful entrepreneurs, they'll tell you this is the go-to book when it comes to personal development. And it's Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. I don't know how many of you have read that book. Hands up if you have. It's a fantastic book. There are timeless lessons. This book, I think it was written back in 1930s or something like that. So it's a really old book, but it's got timeless lessons that you can learn again and again. So I highly recommend the book. If you haven't read it, write it down, go research on it, buy your copy and read it. It's a fantastic read. So I've drawn a couple of lessons from this book to try and address how to develop a winning self-image. And the first thing that you learn from it is desire. And I think it's very important for you to be able to build a positive self-image. You need to almost like develop desire in you, and desire to achieve something, desire to fulfill your dreams, desire to attain your goals. And because I think sometimes we fall short. We have goals, we have ambitions, we have wishes sometimes. That I wish I were like this. I wish I lost weight. I wish I earned more money. I wish I became more influential in my community. I wish this. I wish. We have so many wishes, but I think those wishes have to be turned into desires. Now, what is desire? You ask me. Basically, desire is just definiteness. It's just definiteness of purpose. Is having a purpose that is so definite, it's so absolute, it's so solid, it is so written on stone, so unchanging. And that's how you develop this desire. It's that unwavering state of mind. I think the problem that we face most of the time is when it comes to our plans and our goals and things like that, we don't invest enough time to dwell in them. We don't invest enough time to think about them. We don't invest enough time to ponder on these thoughts and really be almost like absorbed in them. You know, what I always say is this: unless you allow yourself to be obsessed with your goals and your vision, it's very difficult to realize them. The problem is usually we write these goals down. A lot of people say, if you have goals, make sure you write them down. But what we do is we write them down and we leave them down. And unfortunately, when you do that, it doesn't work, because unless those goals and those visions and those desires become imprinted in your subconscious mind, you will not become who you want to be. For you to become that person, you have to your habits have to change. You have to automate that process. You have to become that change, if you like. And to do that, it starts with your desire. It starts with that definiteness of purpose. It starts with that unwavering state of mind, keeping yourself occupied with that same goal, that same idea, that same philosophy, if you like. And by doing that, you start changing your self-image, and eventually it becomes habitual. It becomes easier for you to become who you want to be. So the key thing here is turning dreams into organized, persistent thoughts. And I think that's the challenge. You have to turn your dreams into persistent thoughts, something you think about all the time. When you wake up, that's what you're thinking about. When you go to sleep, that's what you're thinking about. If you're reading scriptures, scripture say that we ought to meditate upon the word of God day and night. You know, when you meditate upon it, when you're meditating, you're actually persisting in that same thought, and by doing that, you become what that thought is. So it's very important to kind of create that desire, which will go a long way into creating a winning mentality and self-image. Now, the second one is very similar to that desire, but it goes a bit deeper than that, and that is faith. Now, how does faith come? Faith comes through affirmations. What is affirmations? Affirmations are those positive proclamations about yourself. You sometimes there is most of the negativity that we have comes through the negative dialogue that we have with ourselves. So many times, though sometimes we may not even speak out, but we have this negative dialogue that goes within ourselves that, you know, Charles, you can't do this. Charles, you're not good at this. Charles, you're very poor at that. Charles, you failed there yesterday. There is so much negativity going on inside. Now, faith is exactly that. Faith is when you have positive affirmations about yourself, that Charles, you can do it. Charles, you're a good man. Charles, you are capable. Charles, you are rich. Charles, you can achieve this. Charles, you're influential. Charles, you're a great motivational speaker. And these positive affirmations go a great way to kind of build your faith. And in the long run, they change your image. And eventually you start thinking that way, you start feeling that way, and you become that way, because that becomes deeply embedded in your subconscious mind. So faith is also repeated instructions to the subconscious. Basically, that's what it is. It is when you're repeating the same instructions to your subconscious. Again, I love scriptures. Romans 10:9 and 8, chapter 10, verse 9 to 10. It says, you know, by faith we believe. We believe in our hearts, and we confess with our lips unto salvation. So believing, faith, is of the heart. You know, so many times when you read scripture, and I love reading scripture, when they talk of the heart, they're talking about something much deeper than the mind, something much deeper than what you think about. The heart is the core of yourself, and it speaks of your subconscious, what you don't necessarily feel or see on the outside. That's where faith is. It's deeply in your subconscious, and it's when you repeat those instructions in your subconscious, when you keep telling yourself in your heart, not in your mind. Faith is not of the mind. Faith is of the heart. And that's why I've had this conversation where people think, so how do you bring this faith into the heart? You know, how do you take it from the mind, you're thinking of it consciously, into the heart, subconsciously? This is what happens. You need to have those repeated instructions. Keep that desire going. Keep yourself in that same thought. Keep meditating upon it until you become what you are trying to be, basically. Now, faith defies logic. Because why? Because logic basically is your definition of reality. Logic is your definition of what you see, of what is around you. For instance, like using the same example before. For instance, your view may be that you're broke, you're poor, you don't have much. And sometimes that dialogue that goes on within you, that I can't do this, you know, I'm poor, I can't afford that, I can't do that. Now, faith is you defying that logic and saying, no, I can be rich. I can be wealthy. I have these targets. If I do this, this is what I will achieve. I can do this. I'm able. I can make a difference in my life. I can better myself in this. I can better myself in that. And the more you affirm yourself, the more you repeat those instructions, and the more you dwell in those kind of thoughts, the better you build your faith and you defy reality, if you like. Now, the third lesson is what is called autosuggestion. Now, autosuggestion is the art of suggesting to your own subconscious mind what you ought to become. So you can see the first one, desire, faith, autosuggestion, they're all addressing the same thing. It's all about making an imprint in your subconscious mind. And it's really important to kind of understand these concepts. I can't recommend enough reading this book yourself. I'm just giving you glimpses, but if you can get your own copy of Think and Grow Rich and read these things, I guarantee you it will turn your life around. So now, effective autosuggestion requires emotions. Now, let me explain what I mean by this. You realize the things that have an impact on you the most are the things that were very emotional to you. For instance, if someone does something terrible to you and it made you feel so bad, it really hurt you on an emotional level, or it really angered you, it is more likely for that to stay with you for longer. And so many times the things that we remember, the things that affect us even later on, especially when you go to therapists and you're trying to get healing on different areas, they'll try and go through the things that you've gone through in the past, try and assess whether you're facing post-traumatic stress disorder, whether there are issues that really traumatized you in the past and really created that emotional overload, if you like, and as a result, it had a lasting effect on you. So the same negative emotions, the same way that negative emotions, anger, pain, discouragement, violence, all these negative emotions that would have come, sadness, feeling of loss, all these things, they can really affect your self-image. But at the same time, positive emotions as well go a long way into really building a positive self-image as well. So it's very important to understand this concept of autosuggestion. Now, for you to be able to effectively make an imprint in the subconscious mind, it's very important to kind of bring emotions into things, to kind of galvanize emotions, to kind of look for opportunities that really put you in that beautiful state, that happy state, that positive emotion, because it is these emotions that could bring lasting change, could help you make an imprint in the subconscious mind. Because if you don't have these emotions, if you can't feel these things you're suggesting to yourself, then it's very difficult for them to permanently affect your self-image and really determine how you would feel and act in the future. And finally, the last one is imagination. Now, when it comes to imagination, we know that everything created, everything we see, and we saw this even in the video that I played before. Everything starts with imagination. Everything starts with an idea, and I mean, you think of it. The plane that is flying, the planes now we're flying around the world. It started with an idea. What do we call it? The Wright brothers. You know, they had an idea that what if we could fly? You know, and I'm sure at that time the idea was so ludicrous, was so absurd. People must have laughed at that. But that's how everything starts. Someone envisions an idea of building a skyscraper of 120 stories, you know, and it goes on paper. They start drawing pictures. How is it going to look like? How is it going to work? It takes years, sweat and blood. People lose lives, but then eventually humans realize their dreams and ambitions. Why? Because they have this power of imagination. They have power to imagine things and bring them to reality. Now, that also is another tool to develop a winning self-image. In order to have an imprint in your subconscious, you need to develop the art of imagination, to keep your ideas alive, if you like. In life, they say, in life we have millions of ideas, but the question we have to ask ourselves is, why don't we get to realize our ideas? Why do we fail to realize our ideas? Why do we fail to bring these ideas to fruition most of the time? I think the answer is that we fail to keep them alive. Most of the time we think of an idea and then unfortunately life interrupts. reality kicks in and you think, oh, that can't happen. Oh, there is this. There is that. You don't have the resources. Oh, you are a failure. There is this or there is that. And as a result, we are stopped on the tracks, and we don't get to pursue those ideas. But how? A $1,000,000 question is, how can I pursue all my ideas? How can I keep these ideas alive? And I've got 3 words for you: coaxing, nurturing, and enticing. Now, coaxing is how do I define it? It's like gently persuading yourself. If you have an idea, again, there will always be a million reasons why you can't do it. So you have to almost like antagonize yourself. You have to have an antidote for that. You have to really encourage yourself. I was having this conversation with Sister June and the others that were here early on about motivation, and that the power of positive thinking. That this world is so negative. There is so much negativity going on out there that it's very important for us to almost have the space to kind of nurture our ideas, kind of coax ourselves, kind of encourage ourselves. And I think even with our ideas, we have to do that. We need to have the space and the time to sort of almost like detach ourselves from reality and think of our ideas as they are, and think how we can improve them and nurture them and develop them. The other word is nurturing, which is self-explanatory. You really need to nurture it and protect it and really build it up from there. And the last one is enticing. Enticing, now that speaks of the emotions again. Enticing is when you're really looking for inspirations. You're looking for things that can really galvanize you to push your ideas forward. Because I think that's another problem, that we have these ideas, but we don't look for ways to motivate ourselves. We don't look for ways to inspire ourselves. And that's why reading books is very important. Reading biographies, autobiographies, is very important. If I'm aspiring to be a motivational speaker, I want to read a lot about other motivational speakers. I want to know a lot about John Maxwell. I want to know a lot about Les Brown. I want to know a lot about Jim Rohn. I want to know a lot about all great speakers, Zig Ziglar, Tony Robbins, and all the others. And I have to do that because they keep me motivated. They keep me inspired. They keep me stuck to the idea and thinking like, if they can do it, I can do it. So it's very important to entice yourself in the ideas that you're trying to achieve. So if you keep doing that, eventually these ideas will take over. They'll become giants and they will start driving you. And you'll get to a point that the idea is so big and so enticing and so gigantic that all these oppositions can just be swept aside. The reason these oppositions are stopping us from pursuing the ideas is because the idea is still tiny and it's nurturing. But once you've done the groundwork and the idea is grown big, I'm telling you, there is nothing to stop you. So finally, let me conclude with practical suggestions. Okay, I've spoken a lot of theories from Napoleon Hill, theories from Maxwell Maltz. Now, what are the practical suggestions for us? What can we take home today and start working on from here on end to start making an imprint on our self-image? The first one is about reading books, and I can't overemphasize this. If you haven't got your to-read list, then you need to make it now. We all have our to-do list, the things we want to do, but we need to have a to-read list, and you need to have a set of books that you say that I must read these books by the end of the year. I must read these books by the end of the month. I must read these books by the end of the week even. And this is really important because once you have that habit, then you can pick and choose what books you want to read and choose the books that actually are aligned to your dreams, that will inspire you to achieve what you want to achieve. Like I said earlier, if I want to be a motivational speaker, then I'll read books about motivational speakers or books written by motivational speakers. If I want to be a doctor, I'm not going to start reading books written by engineers, would I? If I want to be a doctor, I read books written by doctors. If I want to be an engineer, I read books written by engineers. So you need to have this to read list of books that you will galvanize and take you where you want to go. But with the books, I think it's very important. I have this question here. What book are you reading now? I think it's very important at any point in time to have a book that you're reading. Now, it is not so much about finishing books and having so many books to read, but it's very important to always have something that you read, because that's how you keep motivating yourself. That's how you keep yourself on task. That's how you keep yourself focused on what you want to do. Remember the psycho-cybernetics, always keeping yourself zoomed in into what you want to do, and even when you deviate, you always come back. Reading books really helps you to do that. It galvanizes you, it keeps you inspired, it keeps you going. Another thing you can do is to watch what you're watching and what you're listening. I mean, we spend a lot of time on telly, we spend a lot of time listening to music, listening to different things, podcasts and stuff. It's very important to deliberately choose and be very picky as to what you're listening, what you're following, and what you're watching on a daily basis. And I'm telling you, this has really transformed my life personally. Sometimes I wake up in the morning. Some days I wake up in the morning feeling really down, feeling very distraught, feeling very negative. And if I'm not careful, the rest of my day might end up that way. I might end up not achieving anything. I might end up not really fulfilling much because I've just woken up really down. But sometimes it only takes me listening to Les Brown for 15 minutes. And usually it will be something very simple. I might just go to the kitchen and say like, right, I'm going to be washing dishes for the next half an hour or 15 minutes. I'm just going to put Les Brown here and listen to him. And sometimes it's just that random. And I put him in. And as I do that, it only takes a couple of minutes to completely turn my mentality around, to completely turn the way I think and feel on that particular day. And it could completely change my success on that day and how much I will achieve and what I'll go on to do on that particular day. So what you're watching, what you're listening can really impact your subconscious mind, can really impact your self-image. So I highly recommend audiobooks. You can play them in your cars. Some people commute for hours going to work. Yeah, what are you listening in your car? Try audiobooks. It will really turn your life around. And when you're doing different chores in the house, when you're doing this, what are you listening? What are you watching? It's very important to kind of fill that with positive things that are in line with your targets and your goals. The next one is, who do you spend time with? Again, this is really important. If you're spending time with negative people, you'll become negative. And even if you think you're a very positive person, it will be really difficult for you because you will have to be fighting against yourself all the time. The other day we were talking about authenticity and about really, aligning your thoughts and your words and your actions together to your success. Now, spending time with people who are positive can really help you be authentic yourself. Sometimes it's very difficult to be authentic because if you're spending time with negative people and all they're thinking is negative, all they're talking is negative, it becomes really difficult because you end up struggling with yourself. You're thinking positive, the conversation you're having is very negative, you can't marry those two together, it becomes really stressful. Don't do that to yourself. Associate yourself with positive people, associate yourself with people who are like-minded, people who are thinking the way you're thinking. Mastermind groups, I highly recommend. A mastermind group basically is a group of people that aspire to go where you want to go, basically. So if you're an entrepreneur, your mastermind group will be filled with entrepreneurs. If you're a motivational speaker, your mastermind will probably be filled with people who are thinking likewise, who like motivation, who are motivational speakers themselves, maybe they're entrepreneurs, but they're very positive-minded people. If you're an engineer, your mastermind group will probably be filled with engineers because that becomes almost like your inner circle, your network of group that you really bounce out ideas and learn from. But very importantly, if you have a mastermind group, it's very important that you interact with them regularly and you interact with them positively. Like what we're doing right now. It has to be something that you do regularly and something that you do positive, a space where you can bounce up positive ideas and forget about all your flaws and your failures and just be positive about your aspirations and what you want to achieve. I think that is really important. Something else that is really important is vision boards. And I know in the group here we have champions of vision boards. I know Sharon. I don't know if she's still here. Sharon loves vision boards, and I know another friend of mine, Rennie. He loves vision boards, and it's a great idea. It's a great tool. It really can transform you because sometimes some people learn better by what they see. You can be told things, you can hear things, you can read things, but sometimes the vision, the visual aspect of it can be a very positive impact in your life. So vision boards are really good. If you come to my home office upstairs, and I have a tiny little office, and right in front of me, I've stuck a lot of things there. I know I've got quotes there. I've got pictures there. Sometimes I've got an entrepreneur's creed. If you've never heard of that, you can Google it, entrepreneur's creed. And it's got all these positive affirmations about who I want to be. I've got this nice quote that says, I did not wake up this morning to be a mediocre, you know, and lots of other things. So those kind of things are really important, something that you can visually see and really that could affirm who you want to be. Some people use pictures of what they want to achieve, their house, their dream car, their dream holiday, you know, the people they admire, you know, their role models, there were pictures of them there. So vision boards can be a really positive thing and can be something that can really help build your self-image and really galvanize you into start transforming your life. So that is really important as well. And finally, power of repetition. There are no shortcuts here. It's all about repetition. Again, I said we are creatures of habits. And at the end, unless we can change our habits, we really can't have lasting change. And to change your habits, you need to start acting different consistently and repetitively. If you read the book, the Psychocybernetic book, I recommend it by Maxwell Maltz, he talks about the rule of 21. That if you do the same thing consistently for 21 days, that becomes your habit. In some cases, that's the case, that is true. In other cases, it takes a bit longer. Others say it takes up to 180 days, about 6 months, to actually create a habit, a permanent habit. But whether it's 21 days or it's 180 days, it doesn't matter. The important thing here is the power of repetition, the power of consistently doing the same thing, keeping at it, even when you don't feel like it, you keep doing it consistently, because the reward of it is if you do it long enough, eventually it will be automated. It will be what you do naturally, and it'll be easier for you, and therefore you become a winner naturally. I'll give you a simple example. For instance, you know, we learn to admire these great footballers, Messi, Ronaldo, you know, you name it. I don't know who your footballing icon is, but what we fail to understand is that these people have got these drills. They keep doing what they do day in, day out. They eat football, they drink football, they think football, they wake up into football, they go to sleep into football. All they do is just football day in, day out. And they keep doing the same things and they keep perfecting it. It gets to a point that what they do is so natural with them. You know, what we see them doing, we kind of think, oh, how could they think of doing that? Oh, that is amazing. They've done that a million times during practice. They've done that a million times the week before. You know, everything's drilled in. Power of repetition. So I really encourage you, if you want to have success, if you want to really change your self-image, it's not just about telling yourself once. It's not about affirming yourself once and walking away. It's about drilling in. Keep doing it day in, day out. Everything that I've said before about reading books, about affirmations, about faith, about auto suggestion, about having mastermind groups. It has to be repeated. It has to be continuous. It has to be consistent. And by doing that over time, you end up building a really powerful self-image. The same way that you could have developed a really negative self-image over the years because of your experiences in the past, it is the same way you can build a positive one through repetition and consistency. Having said that, that's the end of my presentation. And thank you so much for listening. And I hope you've gotten something out of that. I can see that there are quite a lot of things on the chats there. I'll just invite Steve to kind of do a bit of discussion, and then we can wind up. You're welcome, Steve.
Oh yes, yeah. Thank you very much, Charles, for a nice presentation. Actually, as I said earlier, this is a very vast, topic. Bearing in mind that, as we've said, all these things are happening in subconscious level. And by saying this, it means that, when you and me we were, babies, we were little, all these things got put into the mind, and went down into our subconscious mind. And then we just can't live and operate that way, So, yeah, it may take time, it may be a challenge, but, yes, we can still change. So, yes, I'm opening the discussion. Sharon, I think you're there already. You've been listening very. I've been looking at you very. You know, you've been listening very, very keenly. So, can we have your contribution, please, before we proceed further?
I think for me, when I had this, when I had this, I've done a lot of self things like this, but what hit me and I almost jumped off my seat is when Charles went straight to the subconscious, because a lot of speakers miss that. They talk about self-confidence, self-esteem and all that, and it's all eternal changes from your subconscious. And if we're talking to people who are Christians, we'll say the Bible talks about faith, inward, living from inward outside, internally to the outside. A lot of the way the world has synthesized us is we're living from outside inward. So when you're a baby, your mom talks to you, you come out to an environment, your neighbors tell you how you should live, then there's the uncles, the teachers, and to change that, you've really got to go back to your internal self. So I say to people, so I do something called inner work, and I say to them, take away your job, take away your money, take away your school, take away your career, take away your wife, take away your role as a father. Who are you from the inside without these things? And for me to hear Charles break that down so well, who are you without the things that define you outside? And one of the things I say to people is, don't complain about that one and this one and this one, what's happening in your outer world. If you see something happening in your outer world, can you look inside you and see where the chaos is coming from? So for me, that's what I would say to people. If you see something happening in your outer world, it's reflected in your inner core. It's being manifested from within. Go back to your inner world and see what's happening. Thank you.
Right. Thank you very much, Sharon. Yes, I do appreciate your contribution. Yes, as I said earlier, actually, yeah, we got to do the work subconsciously, because there's where our actions come from, you know. That's where the engine is, you know. It's not consciously, it's subconsciously, you know, what has been impressed for time, that's what really governs, as Charles said in psycho-cybernetics. We just do things by autopilot, you know. But the thing is, there is nobody or no circumstance can prevent us from, you know, improving our self-image. You know, we are able to improve our self-image, and you know, the thing is to be ready. The thing is to be prepared. The thing is to say, well, I want to change this, you know, and it is possible. Sister June.
Right. I even texted Charles to ask, are we allowed to give scriptures? And he said, absolutely. When he started about that one, the first word which came into me was, you know the story of the children of Israel when the spies went to spy the promised land. And when they came, 10 out of them, they gave a particular report, but that's in book of Numbers 13 towards the end. It says, verse 33 says, there we saw the giants, the descendants of Anak came from the giants, and we were like grasshoppers in our own sight, and so we were in their sight. And I look at it, I don't read anywhere where it says like the descendants of Anak said that the children of Israel were actually grasshoppers. They saw themselves as grasshoppers before them. And they confirmed that, and so we were in their sight, because what you feel in the inside of you starts manifesting in the way you respond to situations, in the way you interact with people. You can have greatness, and some people can even start wondering what is wrong with this one, because sometimes we think there is something good, and she's acting in a very different way, because it's like you have already concluded at the back of your mind, and as you're saying, we are operating in an autopilot. There is no any other effort to kind of counter that, because it's already registered there that I am a failure. That is how you perceive yourself. That is how you see yourself. Whether you are in a group of children, you will see yourself as a failure, and you will start acting like a failure And those people will start feeling, indeed, you are one. Even if without saying, your actions will start kind of backing it up. And I was looking at this scripture. It says, we were like grasshoppers in our own sight, and so we were in their sight. Who told them that they told them that we are actually seeing you as grasshoppers? They concluded that, and I think they started acting like one. And now those people, they actually magnified that aspect of them being giant. Even maybe they did not have the energy, they did not have God, they have nothing. So what we see in the inside of us sometimes comes out in our actions, the way we speak. You know, I always say our mind is a seed which will bear fruit in whatever shape, form, or size, you know, and location. So what I am speaking is part of what I have concluded about myself. The way I carry myself, the way I portray myself, some people will look at me and say, hey, June, you know, you have these good ideas. Well, I bless God for that, but it is something that I have cultivated in the back of my mind, that wherever I go, I see myself as having a solution, not of my own. Sometimes I will pray, oh God, what do I do here? And then the courage to speak that one, because I have cultivated in my mind that I am not a failure, and God did not create me by mistake. So I have to establish that in my mind. Challenges will come, but the fact that I have that at the subconscious of my mind, that I am not a mistake, I you know, there's a room for me to succeed, then it will start to shape how I respond and how I react to, you know, to issues around me. So that is one aspect I could say. Let me pause here, you know, June.
All right, before I welcome Boke, let me say this. Let me read you this. You see, the degree to which you improve your self-image, you improve the image of yourself, will be in exact proportion to the amount of truth that you can honestly accept and the amount of positive change you put into engineering your new self-image. It simply means that, you know, at times you can say, oh, there's circumstance, you know, there's this, there's that. You can put an excuse. But if there is no circumstance that you think or feel is conducive, then go and create one, you know. So we have a, well, I can say a duty of care for ourselves, you know. We normally have a duty of care to work. Now you have a duty of care for you and for me to make sure that, you know, we rectify this, you know. Otherwise, it's not going to change. And actually, Charles did mention, you know, a couple of people who are great. But there is one that I love the most, is Mr. Jim Rohn. And he was an amazing guy. You know, I just loved him. He was very wise man. You know, he say success is something that you attract, right? By the person you become. And that's what it is. You know, if you haven't grown up to that level, if you subconsciously, you can say something like, yeah, I claim, but if you're not doing an improvement, you know, to be £1 million subconsciously, then it won't happen. You know, we're going to feel it, we're going to touch it subconsciously. You know, we're going to see it before we can become what we, you know, what we feel or see. So we have to become first subconsciously, you know. So yeah, Boke, welcome.
I've learned a lot. I think all these, the whole message is very applicable to so many things. And I like the 4 steps from the book as well. I think following those steps in that order, just starting with a desire, having faith, and taking action by verbalizing it, and yeah, just using your imagination. I think it's something that's so practical and so doable. Yeah, I really want to apply it more in my own life. I think the faith part, it's like a really hard part, because if you keep looking at what isn't going to work, or like what could come in the way, or the kind of barriers you might face, it makes things more difficult. But faith is really what makes everything possible. It's just your belief. I think there was a quote from a movie I watched. It was a Christmas movie. And they said, whether you think you can and you think you can't, you're right. So yeah, if you think like that, okay, I think I can't, and then you're not gonna try. So yeah, mindset is a really powerful thing.
All right, amazing. Thank you very much, Bouquet. That's very good. I see somebody, Victor iPad. Victor, are you there?
Yes, I
Victor.
am.
All right, Victor. Can we hear from you, sir? I've been looking on the chat. You know, you've been putting very good points. So can we now hear from
What?
you live? Thank you.
Yeah, okay.
But can we see you though? You know, because it's gonna be really nice if we can
Yeah.
see you. You know, if possible. You know, I hope you know can we see you at least while you're presenting this? That would be amazing. Yeah. Thank you, sir.
Uh, yeah, I followed through the talk, and yeah, it was quite uplifting, and I think Charles made two very good points, which I identify with, which obviously have been covered by other speakers. One is the inner self, how we feel about ourselves, quite frankly, goes a long way to portray who we are. That is, if we are honest with ourselves. Some people have a way of using the external to hide what is actually within. And that can be something that hinders them in terms of achieving their goals and creating the right impression of who they are. Because often enough, that disparity of the inner thinking and the outside exposure is why people would say, oh, this person is insincere. Because once you get to see beyond the veil, you see that they were hiding something, or they were not reflecting who they actually were. And it becomes a shock when you know, they trip up, if you like, say something that they don't mean, or do something that they didn't say. That sort of thing. And the second point was the repetition aspect, because I remember back in the day when we were growing up, you had to study your Bible verses, and you could only do that through repetition. You went over the same thing again and again and again, and your teacher, your parents would sit you down and you'd go over your Psalms again until you get it right. And once it's there, how many years on, I can, recite so many Psalms because I had been taught. I can recite so many Bible verses because I've been taught that. I can recite poetry, literature, sections of books, because I didn't just read and it stuck with me. I haven't got a photographic brain, but it's given, but the repetition of it, the repetition of learning and presentation has ingrained that in me. And I think it's quite right, because once we set ourselves on the right path of what we want to do, and we make minor corrections, making sure that we go back and make that minor adjustment, then yes, we're on the right path.
Thank you very much, Victor. Appreciate your contribution.
Okay.